right, welcome back to episode 2 of Velocity plugin development. And we're going to be picking up right where we left off from episode 1, where we had just installed the plugin to our server and made sure that the info message right here was actually displaying. This episode is going to be covering events and registering them. So, as we discussed in the last episode, this plugin is going to be a dynamic lobby manager. We're going to be able to select the default lobby dynamically instead of having to change the config in velocity.toml. To do that, we want to listen for the connect and disconnect events that Velocity provides. So first, we want to go ahead and create a list of all players on our server. We're going to do this by adding their UUIDs to an array list. And then when they join, we'll check if they are already in that list, just as a safety check. And when they leave, we'll remove them. So we've created our array there. And let's go down here and we're going to create a new event. This is going to be a server pre-connect event. So we're going to do an @subscribe. Now, note when I did that, one from com.google.common.eventbus showed up. That is not the one you want to use. You want to use com.velocitypower.api.event. That is actually a common issue, so common that Velocity has it in their documentation. So just be sure to use the right one. We're going to go ahead and create this event, name it whatever you want, because in our main class, it will not matter since Velocity registers all listeners in this class, or it registers this class as a whole as an event listener. We're going to just name this on-server pre-connection event. And it's going to be a server pre-connect event, and that is provided from the Velocity API. So what do we want to do to make sure this works properly? Well, first we want to go ahead and get the player in question. Now that we've gotten the player in question, we want to go ahead and get the default server. We'll do default server in the config episode later on. I almost got ahead of myself here. For now, we're just going to go ahead and hard code it as lobby for the time being. Then we want to check if our array of connected players already contains the player that's trying to join. Why are we doing this? Well, this is a server pre-connect event, not a proxy pre-connect event. So when someone tries to pre-connect to any server in your network, it's going to fire this event off. We don't want to force them to the lobby every time they try to switch away from the lobby. So we only want to make sure that they're being forced into the lobby one time. If they're not on the list, that means it's the first time they're joining. We're going to go ahead and just straight up add them. Now notice I did player.getUniqueID. I believe in Spigot this is getUUID. Don't quote me on that, but it is a little bit different method name in Velocity. Now that we've added them to the list, we want to check to see if the original server they're joining from is named lobby. So the way we're going to do that is with this method right here, and I'll explain this in a second. So event is the server pre-connect event. Get original server is a Velocity method which allows you to get the server they are attempting to join. Get previous server would be the server they're joining from. Get previous server might be empty if they haven't joined before. Now, these return an optional. Well, they will return an optional. We'll use a method that returns an optional. But get original server does not. So then we're going to be going ahead and doing get server info, which is going to get the server information of the original server they're attempting to join. We're going to go ahead and get that name, which returns the string of the server. So apologies for the misspeak there. Next, we're going to be doing event.setResult, server preconnect event.serverResult.denied. This is a static method that basically just says that the result of this connection is denied and it will block that connection. Now, if you just left it here, they'll actually get stuck on the logging in screen. They'll have to hit cancel and they're going to try logging in again. So we don't want that. It's a loop. What we want to do now is get the default server information, and then we're going to request them and connect to that one instead. So I'm going to do registered server equals proxy.getServer default server. Go ahead and import that. And I'm sorry, lobby, not default server. We'll use default server later. Now you may be wondering, why is this underscored? Well, it's because it's accepting an optional. If you provide a value here that is not a name of a server in your backend, it's going to return nothing. So let's go ahead and wrap this in an optional. And now what we need to do is check to see if the optional has a value. In other words, make sure that the server is not null. We're going to use a lambda for that. So we'll do server.ifPresent, and this is going to take a consumer. So we're going to do registered server, event.getPlayer.createConnectionRequest, lobby. I'm sorry, not lobby, registered server. So what is this, right? If you've never seen a lambda before, lambdas are kind of like they're used heavily in JavaScript. Right now, I'm blanking on the name. They might be called lambda in JavaScript, but I'm not entirely certain. But basically, this is a shorthand for a function. So this can also be rewritten as this: if server.isPresent, then event.getPlayer.createConnectionRequest server.get.createConnectionRequest. Or sorry, server.get would be actually just what we're doing. So basically, this is just a shorthand of this method here. So now that that is done, we also want to check when they disconnect. Now, why would that be? Well, if they disconnect and then they reconnect again, they're still going to be in this array, right? So this method right here will just be skipped entirely. We don't want that to happen. So we're going to go ahead and create another event. We're going to call it on player leave. This is going to be just a disconnect event. And then we're going to get the player and remove them from the list. Now, the good thing about the remove method is that we don't have to check if the player already exists. If it doesn't, it'll just gracefully exit. So now that that is done, we're going to go ahead and build it here. And actually, let's go ahead and add some messages because we won't be able to tell if this is working or not automatically. So let's go ahead and put a message here. This.logger.info. Player has not joined this session, adding to array. And then down here, we will say this.logger.info, sending player to lobby. Now, this will probably not fire because we're going to go ahead and join the lobby server by default. However, if you weren't joining the lobby server by default, this would fire. And now in our on leave event, we can do logger.info, player has left, removing from array. Go ahead and rebuild that again. All right, let's go ahead and install that on our proxy, and I'll be right back. All right, now that we're back, we're gonna go ahead and log into our server and test this. You can see I already tested at one point. We're gonna go ahead and just test again on camera. Let's go ahead and hit join, give it a second. All right, and you can see here that it said player has not joined this session, adding to array. And if we disconnect from the server, player has left, removing from array. Now, some of you may have gone ahead and created your event in another class and may be wondering why it's not working right now. That's because you need to register it. So the way you would do that is by creating your class, and you would do your @subscribe in here. And then in your main class, in the proxy initialize event, that's where you register them. Why are we not doing this in our constructor? Well, in order to register an event, you need a valid plugin registration, which doesn't happen until after the construction phase. That is why the proxy initialize event is here, which is only fired after construction is complete. So we're going to do proxy.getEventManager, getEventManager.register, and you see this is going to take 2 objects. Why is that? So what is going on is the first object is going to be your plugins object, and then your second one is going to be your event manager. The reason they're objects is because Spigot has no idea what you're going to name your class or what your object is going to be. So it has to do object by default. We're just go ahead and type in this and then new event listeners. Whoop, don't know what happened there. Event listeners. There we go. All right, and now any @subscribe you put in here would work. There's also a couple overrides to this method. So if you do get event manager.register, you can see there is one that takes an event class, one that takes a post order as well. So if you needed to change the post order event, you could. And it also takes an event handler specifically. But we can just use .register and just kind of register everything in that class. So that does it for episode 3 on creating and registering events. Episode 4 is going to be covering commands.